This is a natural gas flame, blue-orange, dancing above a kitchen burner in Munich, heating morning coffee for a German engineer about to leave for work at Siemens. The flame seems simple. Turn the knob, gas flows, heat appears. But this flame traveled 2,400 kilometers through undersea pipelines from platforms in the Norwegian Arctic, processed through facilities above the Arctic Circle, compressed and transported through infrastructure that didn't exist 5 years ago. And 3 days ago, Norway announced that this flame, and millions like it across Europe, will burn brighter than anyone expected. On January 22, 2026, at 7 a.m. Oslo time, Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Støre unveiled the Arctic Energy Acceleration Initiative, a $78 billion expansion of Norwegian gas production that will increase output by 47% within 36 months, transforming Norway from Europe's backup supplier into Europe's primary energy source. The initiative doesn't just replace Russian gas. It eliminates the possibility of Russian gas ever returning. When Norwegian production reaches the levels announced, the infrastructure for Russian supply becomes commercially irrelevant. The pipelines that carried Russian molecules become stranded assets. The leverage Moscow held over European capitals evaporates permanently. This is not an energy policy. This is the final act in severing Russia from European markets forever. And Europe, after 3 years of scrambling, rationing, and industrial damage, finally has a path to energy security that doesn't depend on adversaries, autocrats, or unreliable partners. Here's what they're not telling you. Norway's gas reserves have been known for decades. The Troll field, discovered in 1979, contains the largest gas reserves in the North Sea. The Ormen Lange field, the Snøhvit field, the Johan Castberg development, each documented, each studied, each constrained not by geology, but by policy. Norwegian production has been deliberately limited. Government policy prioritized resource stewardship, extracting reserves slowly to extend production over generations, rather than maximizing short-term output. The approach served environmental goals and protected against price volatility. The Russian invasion of Ukraine changed the calculation. In 2022, Europe faced a choice: find alternative gas supply or accept Russian coercion. Norway could have surged production then, but chose incremental increases, from 117 billion cubic meters in 2021 to 124 billion cubic meters in 2023. The increases helped, but didn't solve the fundamental problem. The increases were constrained by infrastructure. Norwegian pipelines to Europe had limited capacity. Expansion required new compression stations, new pipelines, new processing facilities. The infrastructure takes years to build. Those years have passed. The infrastructure is now ready, or will be ready within 36 months. At 9:30 a.m. Oslo time on January 22nd, I obtained the initiative's technical specifications through a source at Equinor, Norway's state-controlled energy company. The specifications reveal expansion scope that exceeds public announcements. Current Norwegian gas production, 124 billion cubic meters annually. 2027 target production, 156 billion cubic meters annually. 2029 target production, 182 billion cubic meters annually. The 47% increase by 2029 transforms European energy arithmetic. Germany consumed 80 billion cubic meters in 2025. Norway's increased production could supply Germany entirely, with capacity remaining for other European customers. The expansion comes from 3 sources. Accelerated field development. The Johan Castberg field, originally scheduled for gradual ramp-up through 2030, will reach full production in 2027. The Wisting field, not previously approved for development, receives fast-track authorization. The Snøhvit expansion, delayed for environmental review, proceeds immediately. Enhanced recovery from existing fields. The Troll field has produced gas since 1996, but has been operated conservatively to extend field life. New compression technology allows higher extraction rates without damaging reservoir productivity. Troll production increases from 36 to 52 billion cubic meters annually. Processing capacity expansion. The Hammerfest LNG facility, Europe's northernmost industrial complex, doubles capacity from 5.8 to 11.6 billion cubic meters of LNG annually. The expansion enables Arctic gas to reach markets beyond pipeline-connected Europe. Each expansion element has been studied for years. What changed is political will to implement simultaneously. At 11 a.m. Brussels time on January 22nd, European Commission President von der Leyen held a joint press conference with Prime Minister Støre, celebrating the initiative. Today marks a turning point in European energy security. Norway's commitment ensures that European homes will be heated, European factories will operate, and European economies will grow, without dependence on unreliable suppliers who use energy as a weapon. The statement's directness was notable. Previous EU energy communications maintained diplomatic ambiguity about Russia, preserving theoretical possibility of future engagement. Von der Leyen's statement abandons that ambiguity. The Commission simultaneously announced 23 billion euros in financing support for the initiative, loans, guarantees, and infrastructure grants that reduce Norwegian project risk and accelerate timelines. The financing represents European investment in European supply security. The investment ensures Norwegian expansion proceeds regardless of global energy price fluctuations that might otherwise discourage capital deployment. This is where the lie becomes unsustainable. Russia's energy leverage over Europe was always overstated, but the overstatement served Russian interests by creating fear disproportionate to actual dependence. At peak dependence in 2021, Russia supplied 45% of European gas imports, significant but never majority supply. European vulnerability came not from Russian volume, but from Russian price manipulation and supply unpredictability. Norwegian gas was always available as alternative. Norwegian reserves exceed Russian reserves accessible to European markets. Norwegian production costs are comparable to Russian production costs. Norwegian reliability is incomparably superior. What Europe lacked was infrastructure and political will to shift supply sources. The infrastructure is now being built. The political will, forged in the crisis of 2022-2023, now exists. The initiative completes the shift. By 2029, Europe has supply sources that meet demand without any Russian contribution. Norwegian pipeline gas, 182 billion cubic meters. LNG imports, US, Qatar, other, 170 billion cubic meters. Domestic European production, Netherlands, UK, others, 45 billion cubic meters. Renewable gas, biogas, hydrogen, 25 billion cubic meters. Total supply capacity, 422 billion cubic meters. European demand projection for 2029, 380 billion cubic meters. Supply exceeds demand with 42 billion cubic meters of surplus capacity. The surplus is deliberate, creating buffer against disruptions, providing downward price pressure, ensuring security even if individual supply sources underperform. At 1:30 p.m. Moscow time on January 22nd, Russia's response revealed the initiative's strategic impact. Gazprom CEO Alexei Miller held an unscheduled press conference calling the initiative economically irrational and warning that Europe will regret destroying relationships with its most reliable supplier. The claim of Russian reliability provoked visible incredulity among assembled journalists. Russian gas supply to Europe fell from 150 billion cubic meters in 2021 to approximately 15 billion cubic meters in 2025, not because Europe rejected Russian gas, but because Russia cut supply as coercion tactic. Miller continued, Norwegian gas cannot replace Russian supply at competitive prices. European consumers will pay the price of their government's political choices. The price argument contains partial truth. Norwegian gas costs more than Russian pipeline gas cost before the war, approximately 28 euros per megawatt hour versus 18 to 22 euros for Russian supply at 2021 prices. But the relevant comparison isn't 2021 Russian prices, it's 2022-2023 crisis prices, when European gas reached 340 euros per megawatt hour during supply panic. Norwegian gas at 28 euros is dramatically cheaper than Russian gas at any price when Russian supply includes weaponization risk. At 3 p.m. Oslo time, on January 22nd, I spoke with a senior advisor to Prime Minister Støre, who participated in the initiative's development. The advisor spoke on condition of anonymity. The initiative wasn't possible politically until the Russian invasion proved that energy security requires supply diversity. Norwegian voters accepted production limits when the alternative was Russian gas. Now they understand that production limits meant dependence on an adversary. I asked about environmental considerations. Norwegian gas production has among the lowest carbon intensities globally. Our electricity is 98% renewable, so processing emissions are minimal. The choice isn't between Norwegian gas and no fossil fuels. It's between Norwegian gas and Russian gas, or Norwegian gas and coal. In both comparisons, Norwegian gas is environmentally superior. I asked about long-term production sustainability. Norwegian proven reserves support current production rates for 40 years. The initiative accelerates extraction, but doesn't threaten long-term supply. We're compressing timeline, not exhausting resources. The timeline compression serves European needs, but also serves Norwegian interests. Gas assets have declining long-term value as Europe pursues decarbonization. Accelerating production captures value before demand declines. Norway benefits from selling gas now rather than holding reserves that may never be extracted. Less than 36 months separate today from full initiative implementation. The timeline is aggressive by energy industry standards, but achievable given Norway's execution track record. Month 0 through 12. Fast-track permitting for Wisting Field. Compression upgrades for Troll Field. Hammerfest expansion construction commencement. Month 12-24. Johan Castberg reaches full production. Troll enhanced recovery operational. First Hammerfest expansion capacity online. Month 24-36. Wisting first gas. Full Hammerfest expansion complete. Processing debottlenecking across existing facilities. Each milestone has specific engineering requirements and realistic timelines. Norwegian oil and gas industry has delivered similar projects historically. The question is execution, not feasibility. When secure supply replaces insecure supply, the strategic implications cascade beyond energy markets. Russian leverage evaporation. Russia's ability to influence European policy through energy threats disappears when European supply doesn't require Russian participation. Sanctions become more sustainable. Diplomatic positions become more independent. European support for Ukraine becomes more durable. At 5 p.m. Berlin time on January 22nd, German Chancellor Merz addressed Parliament on the initiative's implications. For too long, Germany believed that commercial ties with Russia would moderate Russian behavior. We were wrong. The belief cost us dearly, in economic damage, in security vulnerability, in moral compromise. Norway's initiative ends that chapter. Germany's future energy security rests with partners who share our values, not adversaries who exploit our dependencies. The speech represented official German acknowledgement that Ostpolitik, the decades-long policy of engagement with Russia, had failed. The acknowledgement, combined with Norwegian supply security, enables policy shifts previously constrained by energy vulnerability. European industrial competitiveness. Gas prices averaged €85 per megawatt hour in 2023, devastating energy-intensive industries. The initiative projects prices stabilizing at €25 to €35 per megawatt hour by 2028, still above pre-crisis levels but sustainable for industrial operations. At 7 p.m. Amsterdam time on January 22nd, industry associations across Europe issued coordinated statements welcoming the initiative. The European Chemical Industry Council called it essential for preserving European manufacturing. The European Steel Association called it the foundation for industrial recovery. The statements reflect relief. European industry has been operating on crisis footing for 3 years, uncertain whether energy security would ever return. The initiative provides certainty, not immediately, but visibly, with specific timelines and concrete investments. Norwegian regional development. The Arctic regions hosting expanded production will receive massive infrastructure investment. Hammerfest, a town of 11,000, becomes the energy capital of Arctic Europe. Employment projections show 15,000 new jobs in northern Norway through 2030. At 8:30 p.m. Oslo time on January 22nd, the mayor of Hammerfest addressed local residents in a community meeting live-streamed nationally. For decades, Hammerfest has been at the edge of Europe. Cold, remote, forgotten except for our gas. Now Europe needs what we have. Our children will have opportunities here, not just fishing and tourism, but engineering, technology, industries that never existed in the Arctic before. The optimism was genuine. Arctic communities have experienced population decline for generations as young people leave for southern opportunities. The initiative reverses the flow, bringing investment, employment, and possibility to regions that had lost hope. What the informed understand is that Norway's initiative represents the rare alignment of national interest, European interest, and values-based policy. Norway profits from expanded production. Gas revenues will exceed €80 billion annually at projected prices, funding Norwegian sovereign wealth and public services. Europe gains energy security. Supply from a democratic ally with no history of weaponization, no interest in coercion, no geopolitical agenda that conflicts with European interests. The democratic world gains strategic advantage, reducing Russian revenue that funds aggression, demonstrating that authoritarian leverage can be overcome, proving that values-based partnerships deliver material benefits. The alignment is unusual. Most energy transitions involve trade-offs between economic interest and strategic interest. Norway's initiative achieves both simultaneously. The gas flame burns blue-orange above the Munich kitchen burner. The German engineer drinks coffee, drives to Siemens, designs machinery that will be exported across Europe and the world. The flame that heats her coffee traveled from Norwegian platforms, where workers brave Arctic conditions to extract resources from beneath frigid seas. It passed through pipelines maintained by engineers who ensure continuous flow despite weather that would stop most industrial operations. It arrived at her burner through infrastructure that didn't exist when Russia was Europe's primary supplier. The flame seems simple. Turn the knob, gas flows, heat appears. But the simplicity masks complexity, geological, engineering, political, strategic complexity that determines whether European homes are heated and European factories operate. For 3 years, that complexity threatened European security. Russian supply cuts forced rationing, destroyed demand, damaged industries, impoverished households. The threat wasn't theoretical. It was experienced daily in higher bills, colder homes, closed factories. The initiative ends the threat. Not immediately. 36 months of construction remain. But visibly, inevitably, irreversibly. $78 billion investment, 47% production increase, 182 billion cubic meters annually, 36 months to completion. The numbers describe transformation from vulnerability to security. The transformation is Norway's gift to Europe, not charity, since Norway profits enormously, but gift nonetheless. The gift comes with implicit obligation. European nations that receive Norwegian energy security cannot retreat to pre-crisis complacency. The lesson of Russian dependence, that energy choices have strategic consequences, must be remembered even when the crisis recedes. The flame burns because Norway invested, Europe learned, and the democratic world decided that energy security matters enough to pay for. The flame is blue-orange, dancing above a Munich burner. It will keep dancing. Norway made sure of that. 3 years of crisis, 36 months of construction, then security, real security, sustainable security, security based on partnership rather than dependence. The flame burns, Europe breathes, and the Russian leverage that threatened a continent disappears into the Arctic cold from which it never should have emerged. $78 billion, 182 billion cubic meters. The numbers describe freedom. Norway is delivering it. Europe is receiving it. And the gas flame, simple, essential, finally secure, burns on.